Edgy is cringe. That's the general opinion I see on the internet these days. If something is willing to try to be dark, rough, or just, cool, it can be dismissed or mocked just for being edgy. Because edgy is apparently synonymous with cringe. Cloud is reserved, a loner, and extremely skilled. He's just a generic anime edgelord. Kirito is a shut-in gamer with hidden skills who wears all black and stole his nickname from a better character. He's just so edgy it's cringe. Edgy is forbidden, even if it's, hear me out, actually pretty cool. Batman, for instance, is pretty edgy. He was orphaned as a child, so now he dresses as a bat in all black to strike fear into the hearts of his enemies and keeps his city clean with violence. Batman is pretty edgy, and in my opinion, he's also pretty fucking cool. He's got a rule about not killing to make sure he doesn't become just like the people he's fighting. He's a rich-ass billionaire during the day, and he doesn't even have superpowers because he doesn't need them. Edgy can still be cool. There's an anime I recently got into called The Eminence in Shadow, and it's sort of a power fantasy isekai parody. Kind of. The protagonist's actual goal is to be a character who blends into the darkness and meddles with the main story from the shadows. That is the actual plot of the show. And there are some moments where he goes really over the top as a part of his, performance. It's intentionally edgy because, well, that's the point. But what I think is important is that it's confident. I think over-the-top edgy shit can be really fucking cool as long as it has unwavering confidence in what it's going for. Even if the ideas presented are ridiculous, or sometimes weirdly deep and philosophical, edgy shit can be cool if it has confidence. You know what Metal Gear Rising is. You've seen it before. You've seen videos on it. Maybe Maxor's videos on it. It is a game of memes, literally, it's a part of the story, and over-the-top dialogue. However, it is also a game that fucking slaps. It is a game with amazing combat, incredible bosses, a kick-ass soundtrack, and politics. Now, I hate politics. At the very least, I hate talking about them. These days, if your opinions don't match someone else's, the two of you must be enemies, and everyone needs to have hot takes on worldly issues that, while they are important, frankly, have nothing to do with them. However, when it comes to a piece of art exploring politics, it can be hit or miss. On one hand, if the entertainment is trying to, how do I put this nicely, educate the audience, it usually won't go well. It will come off as heavy-handed at best, or sometimes it will get in the way of the actual entertainment value of the piece, which will piss off the people who disagree with your message, or give a false sense of empowerment to those who agree. I am not a political person, and well, of course I have opinions on everything, like everybody else does. I have no intention of screaming those opinions into the internet, because it will just make half the people who hear it hate me for a reason they shouldn't, and the other half will like me for a reason they shouldn't. I will never talk politics on this channel, or anywhere else for that matter. However, there is a right way for a piece of art to go about this. One option is to do something like what BioShock did, which is to pick a struggle and pick a side to condemn. Now, this sounds like it could potentially be problematic, but BioShock picked objectivism as the thing to criticize, which, let's face it, it's pretty easy to agree with that. It's a dumb philosophy and a terrible idea that could never actually work, so it's easy to criticize without expecting too much flack. However, while I do love BioShock, I generally prefer the other type, when the art in question doesn't necessarily pick a side, when it presents questions before you but doesn't necessarily answer them, when it doesn't tell you what's right and wrong and leaves it as a choice for you to think about. This is the approach that, for the most part, Metal Gear Rising takes. This video will not be focusing really on the ideals at play in MGR, but I figured I'd at least get this out of the way up front and say I do like how they did treat the issues they bring up in the game. I also happen to like Metal Gear Rising's story, as goofy as it is. Metal Gear Rising opens with Raiden in somewhere Africa as a part of a security detail for a prime minister. This detail is halted by this fucking legend with his light-up sword, and you get thrown straight into the thick of it. Metal Gear Rising's gameplay is, to put it simply, fucking awesome. Standard light and heavy attacks, which can be chained together for combos, and a parry system requiring you to attack in the correct direction, which can usually be followed up on. You also have blade mode, which allows you to slow time down and cut shit into 100 pieces. You name it, and in Metal Gear Rising, you can probably cut it, though you mostly use it on enemies. The basic enemies in the game aren't really a realistic threat to you, so this level is short as hell. Then this fucking guy shows up. This is Sundowner, and he's a really interesting guy. Before you can do anything to stop him, he forces you into the first boss of the game. Now, most of the bosses in this game are really damn good, but the Metal Gear you fight in the beginning is kinda dull. The sheer scale feels cool, but you basically just hammer away at the legs for a while until you get the prompt to go into blade mode, and it doesn't really teach you much either since the mechanics are so simple. The only thing you do learn is that Raiden goes to the gym. There's a second phase, if you want to call it that. You run across some missiles, run down a building, and slice the bitch up like the badass anime hunk you are. This is some of that over-the-top edginess that I actually like about Metal Gear Rising. Usually, I'm not a big fan of QuickTime events in games because they take control away from the player, but for some reason I feel inclined to give this game a pass. Raiden runs in order to catch up to a fucking train, only to find the Prime Minister you were trying to protect in the custody of Sundowner and his accomplice, Jetstream Sam. He gets himself skewered, and then you get in a fight with Sam, although it really feels more like an execution. Sam will kick the shit out of you, and this is one of those fights in games you're supposed to lose. Tool of justice this, denying your weapon its purpose that. Raiden loses his eye and his arm, but your boy Boris stops Sam from killing you with the greatest weapon at mankind's disposal: bullets. Then Raiden is in a plane flying over the sea. Yes, it is as abrupt as it sounds. Raiden got himself a new body with a brand new arm to replace the one he lost. Couldn't get a new eye though. Man, American healthcare is so stingy. With this said and done, we now get to the Revengeance part of Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. We also get our healing system, which is ripping out the Gatorade-infused spines of our enemies. I should also mention the upgrade system. It's pretty rudimentary, but it's a decent metric of progression throughout the game. You get basic stuff like health and fuel, but you can also get special moves and even alternate weapons later down the line. You also get introduced to the, cow enemies. If you enjoyed your dad beating you when you were little, you'll enjoy these enemies. And if you still enjoy your dad beating you when you're an adult, then you'll really love these enemies. Then we get our next boss, which is an AI robot dog. Much like the Metal Gear, Doggo is a fun but forgettable fight in a roster of incredible ones. Maybe even more so because it doesn't have any real spectacle this time. After this, you head to the child labor camp. The child labor camp. Now, other games in the Metal Gear series are slow-paced and, most notably, have plenty of stealth gameplay. I'd say it's something Metal Gear is pretty renowned for. However, this game decided that stealth was for soy boy beta cucks. And by that, I mean the stealth in this game is simplistic, optional, and just kind of bad if I'm being honest. The cameras have no fucking awareness outside of what they are literally pointing directly at. The enemies just straight up ignore you sometimes, especially if you make use of the box. And while Metal Gear Rising's movement controls really smoothly when you're moving at Mach 5, it controls like a flaming Tesla Roadster when you're trying to move slowly. Once you make it through this shit, however, you get the real reason you're here: Mistral.
I am Mistral, the cold wind of France. And your reputation precedes you.
Mommy. Mistral is the first Desperado member you get to fight, and her fight is really damn good. And really terrifying, because me and Raiden are both scared of women. Mistral's moves aren't overly complex, but they are very dynamic. You also have to deal with the little ball robots throughout the fight, though I find ignoring them usually to be the best option. I'll be saying this a lot in this video, but this soundtrack here goes harder than diamonds. Once you kill her like the bitch she is, you get to go to Mexico. Reidenberg, Jesse, we have to cook children. Raiden's choice of disguise is, interesting. This fucking game, man. You go through the sewers to try to find a Desperado facility, and you get a few new enemies, namely the chokehold gorillas and, whatever the fuck these things are supposed to be. Look, I said the enemies would be new, I never said they'd be good. Honestly, the gorillas feel like they're so close to being fun, but they just aren't. They're caught in an awkward difficulty limbo where they're too easy to fight solo, but a bit too hard when they gang up on you with other enemies, which is unfortunately every single encounter excluding the first. These, things are fine, I guess. They don't have anything that notable, besides shitty area denial, get the fuck off me attacks with their lean lightning, and sometimes they give you about as much attention as your average Discord mod gives attention to the 4-digit number on the scale they just crushed. In discovering and ass-beating this new enemy, you also get to meet George. I'm just gonna let this speak for itself.
And just like all damn America, President! You lose the map of Ninja Hideout, Ninja Man?
George, I need every detail about how you escaped.
I mean, I don't really know what to say. Am I a bad person for finding this funny? According to George, he escaped as one of many Desperado had brought in for experimentation. Supposedly, they were planning on disposing of the remaining children in their custody, hence George's escape. Raiden realizes he's on a timer and just fucking leaves a defenseless child alone in the middle of the sewers. I know he called people in to pick him up, but Jesus, couldn't you like wait until they get there? Or killer robots or crazy people might show up, you know. Whatever, he'll be fine. Once you get in the facility, you see... Oh, what the fuck? At this point, Raiden is sufficiently disturbed, and after playing as one of the ball bots for about 45 seconds, he manages to reach the remaining captives. And what do you know, George got captured. Who could have seen that coming? Luckily for Raiden, George values his life about as much as Amazon values its employees, so the whole thing essentially turns into a hostage situation without the hostage. Once all of that is cleaned up, Raiden finally gets to leave Mexico and goes to... oh god, Denver. Even worse. The cops attack Raiden with their giant Decepticon, but with the power of this edit, he manages to get through their resistance. Then Sam shows up.
Please, what do you really expect to accomplish here? Play savior to a bunch of brains? And what? Learn a medal? Think about it, Jack.
You look like a pussy. I can fix that. After Sam monologues at you about how much of a little bitch you are for protecting the weak and fighting for justice, a few more police show up and curb stomp the living shit out of Raiden. What the fuck, isn't he supposed to be like one of the most deadly cyborgs on the planet? I know it's because Sam is making Raiden hear the doubts and thoughts of the people he's fighting, to which I ask, has this never occurred to him before? Did Raiden spend all this time fighting battles thinking that his enemies were all evil just cuz? I know he isn't a know-it-all, but even then, I find this hard to believe. Oh well, I guess it's forgivable, which is good because it's the context behind Raiden's entire character arc. See, Raiden firmly believes that his sword is a tool of justice, and something to be used to protect the weak. Idealist, sure, but noble. However, when Sam kicks the living shit out of you at the start of the game, he says, this is what happens when you bring a tool to a sword fight. Then there's all that stuff about denying your weapon its purpose, fighting as well as protecting the weak. Basically, Sam is challenging Raiden's ideals because he sees them as half-baked and flawed, while Raiden is slowly being made to question himself and what exactly he sees as right and wrong. It's honestly a surprisingly well-written dynamic, and it helps that Sam has the greatest shit-eating grin on his face while doing it. After Raiden butchers the police, he becomes emotionally disturbed, which greatly hinders your ability to move and fight. I guess this is what happens when you lose a debate. Now I know why those mongrels on Twitter refuse to concede. This leads you into what simultaneously feels like the longest and shortest stealth section ever. Short, because you barely have any distance to cover and there are barely any enemies, and long because Raiden is moving at the pace of a sloth in a full body cast. Once you successfully make it through, because trust me, you will, you get to meet your next boss, Monsoon.
My name is Monsoon, of the Winds of Destruction. Feasting on the insides of your enemies? How easily you ignore the loss of life when it suits your convenience. So tell me, who saves the weak from the man who saves the weak?
Alright, yes, let's get it out of the way. Monsoon is the funny meme man.
You are diseased. Free will is a myth. Religion is a joke. We're all pawns, controlled by something greater. Memes, the DNA of the soul. They shape our will. They are the culture. They are everything we pass on.
That being said, I think that what he's saying is pretty compelling. It's only kind of laughable because of what godforsaken things memes have turned into. Monsoon is essentially just saying that memes, or ideas that spread amongst people and become ingrained to our culture, are what determine the kind of world we live in, and he's not exactly wrong. He believes that, I can't believe I'm saying this seriously, if you can control the memes, you can control the world. This is also where Raiden's idealistic perception of himself and the world around him falls away. Monsoon makes him realize that some part of him will always be Jack the Ripper, and it helps bring back that edgy, over-the-top confidence that makes this game work so well. See, if this scene was delivered in any other way, it would just be plain cringe. But it ends up being cool, despite being silly, because this game rules and does everything with absolute confidence. It has no fear of being over the top, and I fucking love it for that. It helps that Monsoon's fight slaps. For the previous boss fights in the game, you didn't have to be that good at parrying to make it through. Even Mistral wasn't too overly demanding of the player in terms of skill. Monsoon, however, is a different story. He takes away your lock-on, forcing you to actually aim to parry blows you can't see coming until the last second. He hits you with lightning-fast flurries of strikes with small weapons that can be hard to read. He spaghettifies himself so you can't hit him. He throws fucking tanks and helicopters at you. This fight doesn't fuck around, and it is absolutely awesome. I think the first time I ever played through this game, I wasn't a big fan of this fight, but I've grown to like it more and more on subsequent playthroughs. Once you finally stomp his ass, he monologues some more before Raiden drops the line,
Your memes end here.
This is one of the most games of all time. From here, you get to head into the, tallest building in the world, apparently, and after fighting through the best selection of enemies I have ever seen, like these two brand new, never before seen bosses, one of which is the boss you killed literally right before you started this level, not to mention the Lift Gang. Seriously, whoever designed this encounter, go pound sand. You get to meet the man, the myth, the legend, Sundowner.
Another thing you have in common.
I chose this. They're kids, you son of a bitch.
And kids are cruel. All people are by nature. They just lose touch with it as they get older. Start thinking they know right and wrong. That's immoral. War crime this, code of conduct that. Kids, you can mold, manipulate into performing all kinds of atrocities. And there's nothing like a good atrocity to keep a war going. Did you think every battle in history was all part of some big old conspiracy? Bullshit! War is just part of who we are. Why fight it? Anyway, none of this will matter in 3 hours. Demand for PMCs is about to skyrocket. Like the good old days after 9/11.
What are you talking about?
God, I love this guy. I mean, obviously he's pretty horrible, but I mean, come on. But now that he's here, you know that the enjoyment of this game is about to skyrocket. Like the good old days after 9/11. Is this the most quotable game ever made? Because I think this might be the most quotable game ever made. I should also mention that the pillars all around him are filled with the brains of children, like the ones Raiden saw in the sewers, and the children in question are essentially piloting a bunch of drone soldiers to be used in real battles. Sundowner also explains that their organization has facilities like this all over the world, so destroying just the one wouldn't really do much. He then tells you to meet him on the roof, and you just run there. No enemies, no real parkour, nothing, just a really short run to the roof. Okay. Once up there, the boss fight can finally get underway.
Like I said, kids are cruel, Jack. And I'm very in touch with my inner child.
Sundowner has these red shields deployed from his body, and he'll use them to block your damage. When he does this, you can use Blade Mode to line up your slice and break them down piece by piece. The catch is, if you miss, they blow up in your face. Honestly, even though the soundtrack in this fight is amazing, even for this game, mechanically, this fight really isn't all that. Once you break his armor, the rest of his attacks are super easy to deal with, and he has barely any health. After a brief fall and flight back up in which you just cut through the roof of a skyscraper, cause why the hell not, you get to throw Sundowner into the blender. You are then informed that you have to get from Denver, to the Middle East in 3 hours? Okay, there's a lot of crazy ass shit that goes down in this game, but somehow that might be the most unbelievable thing I've heard so far. Granted, the fastest plane we currently have in the world, the X-43, has a max speed of Mach 9.6, or about 7.3 thousand miles per hour. And, wouldn't you know it, a flight as the crow flies from Denver, Colorado to Kabul, Afghanistan is approximately 7.3 thousand miles. So an hour sounds about right. Bullshit. For one, Mach 9.6 is the X-43's max speed, so it would have to accelerate to that speed. Not to mention, they can't even take off on their own, they have to be carried into atmosphere by B-52s. And on top of that, Raiden still has to make it out of Denver, get stopped by a couple aircraft, fight his way out of Denver again, steal a bike, drive to bumfuck nowhere to a runway that has a craft that fast. Even if fucking Markiplier didn't show up to slow you down on your way, I'm sorry, but there ain't no way Raiden is making it in time. Sorry, just had to get that out there. In this game of cutting through anything with swords, memes, and the good old days after 9/11, travel times are still important, okay? Anyway, like I already said, Raiden tries to leave Denver with the help of Doctor in a helicopter, but fucking Interpol shows up to shoot your ass down. Raiden cuts a goddamn plane in half, then gets sent flying back down to Denver. After a brief fight through the city with no real interesting— hey, wait a fucking minute! Raiden finds a sick motorcycle to steal so he can get the hell out of Dodge. We then see Raiden cruising through the desert on his bike, listening to, I like to imagine, Tuesday's Gone. If only he was on a train. This Raiden's ride is interrupted, however, by none other than Jetstream Sam.
Right. Big raises all around once World Marshal gets all those contracts.
I'm not talking about money, Jack. I'm talking ideals.
Excuse me?
Forget it. We've both heard enough speeches about higher causes by now. History will decide who's right. End of story.
I don't care who thinks I'm right. And I've got cause enough for killing you.
Huh? Oh, good. Why, that's very good. Yes, I like that.
Must you really fight?
Don't interfere.
This is between us.
And it ends here.
Okay. Let's dance!
And now it's finally time. The game doesn't end here, but in my eyes, this is the truest climax of Metal Gear Rising. Sam destroyed Raiden the first time because of his dauntless confidence in his ideals, whereas Raiden's was shaky and half-measured. But now the two of you meet, and Raiden, having accepted what he really is and having overcome every challenge that stood in his way, is truly ready to face Sam again. And what a fight it is. This is the best fight in the game, maybe one of the greatest boss fights of all time. It feels so challenging yet so fair, and of course, the soundtrack goes crazy. Sam essentially has three phases. The first is about what you'd expect, sword combos, fast as hell, even delay attacks. The second phase comes once you disarm him, where he throws charging punches, hard to read close range kicks, and throws you like a goddamn ragdoll if you try and charge him. Then in the third phase, he picks his sword back up, and goddamn, he starts fighting like he means it. He goes into some anime shit and starts charging you from the other side of the arena. And I hope you can get the timing down, because some of these are insanely hard to react to. All in all, this is the greatest game ever made, and this fight is the best of the best. You finally defeat Sam in the end, and it turns out he was barely augmented at all. He was just a guy. with a cool ass sword. I'll take that. Oh, I guess the robot dog can have it. Raiden proceeds to forget that he stole a motorcycle and decides that hoofing it the rest of the way is the best option. Okay, when Raiden left Denver, it was mid-afternoon. Then the sun was setting while fighting Sam, and now it's pitch black by the time you get to the base. What was that about, a 3-hour time limit? Regardless, that guard of the base needs to let them in, and who the fuck made this game, man? Regardless, Raiden gets a little girl called Sunny to let him use the fucking super ship she built because she was either bored out of her mind or she has some really good foresight. They skip the countdown because occasionally the game remembers there's supposed to be a time limit, and Raiden, rides. Reaching Afghanistan well after the impossible 3-hour time limit, Raiden has one more base of helpless enemies to fight through with the assistance of Robot Dog. Actually, he is quote-unquote helping you the entire game by scouting ahead, but it never really gets incorporated into the missions, so much so that I honestly forgot about it until now. Unfortunately, Robo Dog got Old Yellered into the dirt, and once you come across it,
Well, if it isn't Saucy Jack. Just a little too late, as usual. Idiot! You're not ending our plan. You're expanding it. Check the internet lately.
Air Force One is turning back to the States.
What? How'd they know?
Someone posted photos of what's happening on the base. The whole world is up in arms.
Show me.
Went live, and already they're calling for blood.
That's just a spark, son. The excuse we've been waiting for.
Senator Armstrong, the true villain of Metal Gear Rising, in his giant robot. And let me tell you, this guy isn't just an American. He's the American. These comments, are we looking at Twitter or Reddit? Well, either way, you're basically in hell. Armstrong informs Raiden that his plan is to jumpstart the economy by using war as a method of creating demand, and he even used your slaughter of the soldiers on base as fuel for the flames. Because, I mean, come on, you really think the internet is gonna wait for context? This might be the most realistic part of the entire game. I mean, already people are calling for war, and it doesn't look like Raiden can really do much to stop it. According to Armstrong, oh, fuck it, I'll let him talk.
America's wanted this war for years. The Patriots, they knew war was good for the economy. 4 years later, their legacy lingers on.
The memes.
They left us their great isms. Nationalism, unilateralism, materialism. Welcome, Maxim. Give yourself up to the whole. No need to better yourself. You're American. You're number one. Then the only value left is dollar value. The economy. So we'll do whatever it takes to keep it humming along. Even war. Especially war.
Bullshit!
The Patriots planted the seed. We don't need them around to filter and foster their memes any longer. We're spreading them just fine ourselves. Every American man, woman, and child. We're all sons of a Patriots now!
You get the idea. Well, with that out of the way, it's time for the boss fight. Now, it's not that I don't like this fight at all, but it's definitely one of those fights I would call too big to be fun. I'll give it to you, parrying the giant blades of this thing is satisfying as hell and adds to that badass anime hunk shit, but it's also extremely easy. Same goes for the legs. Do that a bit and holy shit, you can do this? I take back everything I said. All is forgiven. This is the most badass shit I've seen since Penguins in Madagascar. Well, I guess that means it's just Raiden and some regular-ass senator. Fight's over, right? Wrong. The giant robot was the warm-up to the real fight, with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Let's go!
The hell are you thinking?
Played college ball, you know.
That's a cushy Ivy League school.
Try University of Texas. Could have gone pro if I hadn't joined the Navy. Don't fuck with this, Senator!
Armstrong, man, what the fuck is your split? What kind of pre-workout do you use? Regardless, now Armstrong has nanomachines, son, and him and Raiden proceed to, have a debate. Armstrong believes in a world where the individual is placed above all else, where freedom is given the most significant value. To that end, he plans to use war to do a sort of cleansing, at least that's what I'll call it. But on the other hand, Raiden points out the problems.
Making the mother of all omelets here, Jack. Can't fret over every egg.
Not when you're purging the weak, right? What do you know about the weak? You weren't born poor. You've never been hungry. You don't know what it's like to fight and steal and kill just to survive.
But you did survive! Through sheer force of will, following your own set of rules. With your own two hands, you took back your life.
And now, I'll take yours.
Raiden has developed his own way of viewing the world well enough to stand for what he believes in, even against Armstrong. They both want things to change, and they both want to, in a way, bend the world to their will, to reshape it as they see fit, even if it's just a little in Raiden's case. But they have drastically different ways of going about this, and they each have a different vision for what they want society to be. Now, remember how I said earlier that I unironically like Metal Gear Rising's story? Well, Armstrong as a final villain is, from a writing standpoint, pretty indefensible. He was not given the proper development throughout the course of the game, and you don't really learn what his real motives, his personality, or really anything about him at all until the very end of the game through like 10 minutes of cutscenes. This should be unbearable from a story standpoint. The thing is, as bad as it seems, it's funny. Armstrong's ideals can be seriously considered, as I just demonstrated, but there's a reason that when people think of Metal Gear Rising, they think of the memes. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Metal Gear Rising doesn't feel the need to always take itself seriously. It's fine with being goofy at times, and honestly, I'm here for it. And it somehow manages to do that and simultaneously be an over-the-top badass as hell adrenaline rush when it wants to. And speaking of over-the-top badass adrenaline rushes,
Armstrong!
I said my sword was a tool of justice. Not used in anger. Not used for vengeance. But now I'm not so sure. And besides, this isn't my sword.
Come on!
Okay. Let's dance.
it's time for the real final boss fight. Armstrong's fight is hard, probably the hardest fight in the game. He's got everything you can think of. He has deceptive reach like Mistral. He forces you to deal with giant projectiles like Monsoon, while forcing you to have precision like Sundowner. And of course, he hits hard and fast like Jetstream Sam. And he has multiple health bars, and he can heal himself. He is, quite literally, the culmination of every other boss you've faced up to this point, both mechanically and, as I explained a second ago, ideologically. And one last time, let's not forget the music. I feel like while music is important to most games, in Metal Gear Rising it's more than that. The music of this game helps tell the story, usually of the people you have to fight, and when you listen to their songs, it adds lots of depth. One about someone who could only feel at home on the battlefield. One about trying to wash away the pain with an increasingly intensifying storm to no avail. One about seeing the beautiful red aftermath of what you've done. One about a man who fights long since having forgotten why. And one about two people who wanted to change the world in different ways, realizing that they might not be so different after all, that violence maybe isn't the best answer, but in the end, it has to be this way. The music of Metal Gear Rising is something special, and is one of the greatest soundtracks for a video game I have ever heard. It also goes pretty well on a workout playlist, so there's that. The takeaway I have for Metal Gear Rising is simple. This game is over the top. It's goofy as hell, it's edgy, it's kinda all over the place at times, and I love it for that. Metal Gear Rising is one of my top 10 favorite games of all time, and there's one thing that all of those games have in common. They all have what I like to call a intangible something to them. It is an aspect I can't quite explain, but I know it's something that makes me love it. If I had to try to say what that is for Metal Gear Rising, it would be that it's a game that is unapologetically itself. It's a game that makes every move with confidence and isn't afraid to, you know, be a bit cringe sometimes. And that's okay. It's okay to be dark and cool and edgy, and it's okay to look a little stupid while doing it. I'm not gonna pretend Metal Gear Rising doesn't have problems, because it sure as shit does. But it makes up for that and then some with treats, like the amazing combat, the soundtrack, most of the boss fights, and the majority of the enemies. Not you. And it's a game that I think other games could easily learn from, at least in terms of confidence. I mean, it works wonders. Not many games are this relevant this long after release. Regardless, I said my piece on Metal Gear Rising, and I had fun doing it. Gave me a good excuse to replay it again. If there's one thing I can end this with, it's that I fucking love Metal Gear Rising. That is the only thing I know for real.